You know, when you hear the word alchemy, your mind probably jumps to dusty old labs, maybe some bubbling potions, and this kind of crazy, misguided quest to turn lead into gold. But what if that whole thing, what if it was all a cover story, a symbolic language for something way more profound, a transformation, not of metal, but of the human soul itself? And that is the question that changes everything, right? What if the alchemists were writing in code, using metals and chemical processes as metaphors for this deep internal journey of psychological transformation? The gold they were really after, it wasn't something you'd find in a crucible. It was waiting to be discovered inside. So let's get right to the core of this whole thing, what they called the great work. At its very heart is a concept they called the Coniunctio, the sacred marriage. And no, this wasn't just about a chemical reaction in a flask. It was all about the union of fundamental opposites. The Coniunctio. This is really the master key to the entire alchemical system. See, where a modern chemist just sees a combination of elements, the alchemists saw this huge cosmic drama playing out. It was a philosophical operation, one designed to heal a fundamental split in the nature of reality itself. And this is where you can really see that massive shift in perspective. To an alchemist, fusing iron and copper wasn't just making bronze. Oh no, it was Mars, the god of war, and Venus, the goddess of love, locked in this passionate embrace. Their materials weren't just inert matter, they were living, breathing principles. And it's these fundamental dualities of existence that the alchemists were totally obsessed with uniting. They believed that true reality, the philosopher's stone, could only be created by bringing these essential tensions together, the masculine and the feminine, the spiritual and the material, what we'd now call the conscious and the unconscious. Okay, so how did they actually do this? How was this sacred marriage supposed to happen? Well, a 16th century alchemist named Gerard Dorn, who was actually a student of the famous Paracelsus, he laid out this brilliant 3-stage map of the whole process. And let me tell you, this first stage, it's probably the toughest one. So here it is, Dorn's map of the great work. We're going to start with number 1, the unio mentalis, or the mental union. This is a completely internal operation. It's about turning away from the outside world to achieve a kind of inner wholeness first. And this journey inward, well, it has to start in a dark place. The alchemists called this stage the negretto, the blackening. It represents a state of chaos, of dissolution, of melancholy. Psychologically speaking, this is a radical, head-on confrontation with your own shadow, all the parts of ourselves that we push down, deny, and pretend aren't there.
This idea of a voluntary death sounds intense, right? But it's a powerful metaphor for pulling back all our projections from the world. It means taking this painful, brutally honest look at our own darkness, our hidden motives, our childish angers, and separating our rational mind from the knee-jerk desires of the body.
And here's the kicker. This first stage, it doesn't end with some magical substance. It ends with self-knowledge. It's the birth of an integrated consciousness, one that's aware of both its own light and its own darkness. This is the absolute first essential step on the path to becoming a whole person.
But you can't just stay in that purely internal meditative state forever. I mean, an insight that you don't test against the real world is just a nice idea, right? So the second stage was all about making this inner truth tangible, making it real. So if we go back to our map, you'll see stage 2 is the union with the body. This is all about taking that wholeness you achieved inside, in the unio mentalis, and grounding it in the physical world. It's about embodying this newfound wisdom, not just thinking about it. To do this, the alchemists believed they had to create a very special substance they called the caelum, which literally means heaven. Think of it as a kind of quintessence, a universal medicine that was both physical and spiritual. It was designed to purify the body and make it a worthy vessel for that united spirit and soul. And the procedure for making this caelum, well, it was a symbolic ritual in itself. Every single ingredient represented a crucial piece of the psyche. Honey was for the joy of life. Celandine with its golden flower, that stood for the self. Rosemary for spiritual love. Mercurialis for that raw, earthy sexuality. And human blood, that was the ultimate binding agent for the whole soul. This wasn't a potion, it was a performance of integrating your total personality. Okay, so you've united your inner world through self-knowledge, and you've grounded that union in your body.
Now the adept was finally ready for the final and most profound stage of the great work. This is the true peak of the alchemical mystery.
And that brings us to the final conjunction on our alchemical map, the union with the Unus Mundus, or the one world. At this stage, the now integrated individual is seeking oneness not just within themselves, but with the very fabric of reality, the source from which everything springs.
Now, this is a really deep concept, so stick with me here. The Unus Mundus is the underlying unified reality that existed before the world got split into spirit and matter, mind and body. It's a dimension where the psyche and the physical world aren't separate things, but are just two sides of the same indivisible coin. And this is where Carl Jung basically had his mind blown. He looked at this ancient alchemical concept and he saw a direct bridge to his own work. He believed that Unus Mundus was the background reality that makes synchronicity possible. You know, those meaningful coincidences where your inner psychic world and the outer physical world line up in a way that just can't be explained by normal cause and effect. That third conjunction is basically experiencing that ultimate unity. So, what on earth does all of this ancient, arcane, kind of weird stuff mean for us today? Well, through their symbolic language, the alchemists actually created this incredibly detailed map for the psychological quest for wholeness, a process that modern psychology calls individuation. You see, what the alchemists called the lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone, psychology calls the self. And this isn't your ego, that's just the center of your conscious personality. The self is the regulating center of the total psyche, conscious and unconscious. It's that archetype of wholeness that we're all striving for. It's almost like a direct translation, isn't it? The alchemical work of uniting opposites in a flask is a perfect metaphor for the psychological work of integrating the conscious and the unconscious parts of ourselves. The goal, no matter what language you use, is exactly the same: to create a new, unshakable center of your being. But here's the central paradox of this whole journey, and it's a big one. This process, it is not about strengthening your ego. It's about humbling it. To experience the self, the ego has to step down from its throne and accept that it's not the master of the house, but just one part of a much larger, much more mysterious whole. And that requires a profound act of surrender. The alchemists projected this whole inner drama onto their lab equipment, their furnaces and their beakers. We don't really have that luxury anymore, or maybe that illusion. The great work is still here. It remains. But its laboratory is now unmistakably within ourselves. So the only real question is, are we willing to begin the experiment?